Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I'm Sister B, and welcome to Islamic Audio Bites. I will be reading part 2 of the Tragedy of Karbala, written by Dr M Hussain, which can be purchased from Amazon. Let's read. A hero of Islam, Imam Hussain. Imam Hussain was the grandson of the Prophet. As a young man, he was very pious, intelligent, and extremely handsome. Historians have said he looked very similar to the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, loved his grandson very much. On one occasion, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was leading the prayer. As he went into prostration, the young Hussein climbed onto the Prophet, peace be upon him's back. The Prophet, peace be upon him, remained in that position for a long time, until the boy climbed down. On another occasion, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was passing his daughter Fatima's house, and heard young Hussein crying. The Prophet, peace be upon him, stopped, and went into the house and said, "Fatima, don't you know, it hurts me to hear Hussein cry." Imam Hussain learnt his knowledge from his father Ali, may Allah be pleased with him. He inherited virtues and chivalrous character from his father. He fought with great honour against the Christians in the siege of Constantinople. In April 680 AD 61 AH, Yazid, the son of Amir Muawiyah, proclaimed himself as the Khalifa of Islam. The vast majority of Muslims, including many Sahaba, were shocked and refused to accept Yazid. The Khalifa should be elected by the plebiscite of the people, and he, above all, should be an exemplary Muslim. Yazid was a man who drank alcohol and committed adultery. He was both cruel and treacherous, living a life of pomp and luxury. On one occasion, he gained great pleasure by dressing up a monkey as a scholar of religion and carried the animal mounted on a donkey wherever he went. Imam Hussain was the very opposite of Yazid. He was very pious and humble, living a life of simplicity. Many Muslims wanted him to be the rightful Khalifa of Islam. Yazid sensed this and was outraged. He immediately went on a campaign of terror where many people were tortured and forced to give him the allegiance. However, Imam Hussain was not afraid and refused to recognize him. Some personalities of Karbala. So you have Nu'man ibn Bashir. He was the governor of Kufa. His allegiance was with Imam Hussain. When Yazid found out, he sacked him and instead appointed Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in his place. Muslim ibn Aqil, the cousin of Imam Hussain. He was sent to Kufa by Imam Hussain to verify the support of the Kufans for Imam Hussain. When he came to Kufa, thousands of people swore oath of allegiance to him, showing their support for Imam Hussain. However, as soon as Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad became governor of Kufa, they switched their allegiance and deserted Imam Hussain, who was brutally murdered in Kufa. Hani, he was a wealthy leader in Kufa who gave refuge to Muslim ibn Aqil in his own house. However, he was discovered and killed by Ibn Ziyad. Abbas, Imam Hussein's younger half-brother, a staunch ally of Imam Hussain till the end. He fought bravely in the Battle of Karbala when he was butchered by the Yazidis. Qasim, the son of Imam Hussain and therefore a nephew of Imam Hussain, he too was brutally murdered in Karbala. Ali Akbar, the eldest son of Imam Hussain, a handsome young man who was killed by the Yazidis as he challenged them courageously. Sharbanu, the wife of Imam Hussain, she was the daughter of the deposed king of Persia, Yazjad. She accompanied her husband and stood by him till his death. Ali Asghar, the 6-month-old baby of Imam Hussain. Imam Hussain held him in his arms, showing the agony of the baby's thirst, but the barbaric army sent an arrow which pierced his tiny throat. And then you have Zainab. She was the sister of Imam Hussain. She witnessed the horrors of Karbala, survived, and spent the latter days of her life in Cairo, where she is buried in an area named after her. The political consequences of Karbala. The tragedy of Karbala is one of the most famous events in Muslim history. It is not merely a story of injustice perpetrated against an individual, namely Imam Hussain, but it has a wider significance. In particular, it was a clash between monarchy and Khilafat, the Islamic mode of government based on consultation, selective democracy, and piety. The clash between truth and falsehood, the war between justice and oppression, is as old as man. History is full of examples of just and upright people defending truth and challenging the tyrants, even if the tyrant wielded the power of the state and the army. The first thing in Yazid's rule with which Imam Hussain was dissatisfied was the rejection of the Islamic principle of selecting the ruler by shura, consultation. The throne was handed down to Yazid. He was not selected by the righteous members of the community. He inherited power and authority. Imam Hussain was not willing to accept his belligerent neglect of the Islamic principles, so he challenged Yazid's authority. The process of selective democracy and consultation, which Muslims had so successfully applied until now, was being wrecked. This was intolerable for Imam Hussain. The freedom to choose a pious and qualified leader that Islam had given to people was being thrown away, and the Muslim society once more thrown into the darkness of pre-Islamic feudalism and nepotism and tyranny. As the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, and the son of the fourth Khalifa Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, Imam Hussain could not remain silent at such a tremendous change. He had to speak out against it. This was a political revolution that would destroy the Islamic society. Imam Hussain could not compromise with Yazid. Although he had no army, he still stood up bravely against the tyrant, thus setting an example for coming generations. He not only spoke out against the illegitimate government of Yazid, but clashed with it. He knew that he could not defeat the mighty armies of Yazid, but he had to set a precedent. That tyranny and unjust rulers must not be allowed to get away with their ways. They must be stopped, fought against, and if the price is one's head, then so be it. For holding up the head of the Ummah, he allowed his own head to be chopped. As the force of Yazid could not intimidate him, nor frighten him, Imam Hussain gave this lesson to us with his blood. By being rebellious against the tyrant king, Imam Hussain set a trend. The cause of justice, democracy, and consultation was given a new lease of life by the blood of Hussain. As long as truth prevailed, Imam Hussain remained a loyal and obedient citizen, but when the truth vanished, he took out his sword and did not rest until he had sacrificed his life, wealth, relatives, and friends for the establishment of truth. The simple lesson of this great martyrdom is that a man of faith should be willing to even sacrifice his life for the sake of truth. In Hussein's grief, eyes flows with tears, but again and again they say to me, proclaim the truth loudly, for still in this world there are many tyrants like Yazid. Who was the winner and who was the loser? The discussion of the following 3 points will help us decide who were the winners and losers in Karbala. Yazid and his army were under the illusion that Imam Hussain was fighting with them because it was an emotional and a temporary crisis, and that sooner or later he will give it up and even regret at what they had done. The question is, was this merely an emotional decision. It is well known that people join the side of the strong and avoid the weak side. People forsake the weak side. But did this happen at Karbala? Yazid thought that after the demise of Imam Hussain, his government would become legitimate and his role accepted by all the people. Did this happen? All the historical evidence points to the fact that this was not an emotional off-the-cuff reaction, but a carefully thought-out plan of action. Imam Hussain was sure that Yazid was trampling over the boundaries of God and distorting the Sharia. He had no right to do so and had to be stopped. Imam Hussain kept on saying Yazid was wrong, and even when he was face to face with the mighty army of Yazid, he said the same thing. Imam Hussain stood up for a principle. He would die for it, but not compromise, and die he did. He gave the lives of his nearest and dearest, and finally died himself. Even after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, Yazid found no peace of mind. The people in Medina and other places were still unwilling to accept him. They were even more angered at Yazid for the killing of Imam Hussain. In fact, the blood of Imam Hussain made things worse for Yazid's administration. Muslims could not tolerate this enormity, this injustice against the Prophet, peace be upon him's family. Shortly after Muawiyah ibn Yazid succeeded to the throne, he abdicated, saying, "I smell the blood of Hussain, and it disturbs me." Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, the just ruler of Banu Umayyah, would give 20 lashes to anyone who would call Yazid Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the faithful. All these historical records make it abundantly clear that Imam Hussein's decision to fight Yazid was the correct move at that time. Shahada literally means declaration and confession of faith. To become a Muslim, one must say, "I declare there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." This is the Shahada. However, the highest form of Shahada is to die for the cause of Islam, the cause of God. This is a physical demonstration of one's love for Allah. The one who performs this type of Shahada is called Shaheed. Quran says, "And we made you the middle nation and a witness against mankind." Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 143. One becomes a Muslim by saying the Shahada, but he lives in Islam by doing Shahada. Shahada inevitably will bring one in confrontation with false gods inside oneself and with those outside, i.e., one's own ego and other anti-God systems. After the seed of Iman is planted in the heart, one has to nourish it and live under the sovereignty of one God alone, and also summon mankind to it. This requires jihad. So we have to struggle for establishment of Islam in our lives. The whole of the Prophet, peace be upon him's life, was a long struggle, a jihad to establish Islam as a way of life. This required power and authority. No system can be established as a way of life without power. Therefore, the politics in Islam. The Prophet, peace be upon him, not only formulated the basis of Islamic political system, but successfully established it in his lifetime. The Prophet, peace be upon him, completed his task in 23 years. After that, the 4 Khalifas carried on the mission. But as the Islamic State expanded rapidly, it brought problems and ignorance crept in. Uthman and Ali, may Allah be pleased with them, gave their blood to combat this, but they could not succeed. The Khalifa abruptly came to an end, and with it the golden era of Islam. This was replaced by the monarchy. Amir Muawiyah laid the foundations of the monarchy, and his son Yazid was the last Muslim king. This was a counter-revolution to the Prophet, peace be upon him's way of governance. monarchy was opposed to Islamic consultative democracy. To purge Islam of this evil and to present it once again in its original pure form was the difficult task of Imam Hussain. The Caliphate was based on 3 principles. 1. Sovereignty of Allah. 2. Enjoining Allah. 3. Trust. However, in the monarchy, the king worship and adoration took the place of Allah's worship to some extent. Secondly, land was captured for worldly gains, and not preaching Islam, but for extending the empire. It was not as though the very character and attitude of an Islamic society was being changed, but the basic principles of the Islamic constitution were being destroyed. Principles such as 1. Democratic elections and consultation. 2. The sense of accountability to God and the people. 3. Equality and justice. 4. The idea of trust, Baytul Mal. With the monarchy came the idea of ownership and not trusteeship. Imam Hussain raised his voice against this unjust system, who he found unfit for leadership. In doing so, he was only fulfilling his obligations as a Muslim. The Quran says, "And struggle for the cause of Allah with all your might." The virtues of the Prophet peace be upon him's family. The Ahl al-Bayt is a phrase meaning people of the house or the Prophet peace be upon him's family. In the Islamic tradition, it refers to the household of the Prophet peace be upon him and his progeny through his daughter Fatima Zahra's marriage with Ali, may Allah be pleased with them. Their sons Hassan ibn Ali and Hussein ibn Ali were the Prophet peace be upon him's grandsons. The Quran tells us, "Surely Allah wishes to thoroughly purify the Prophet peace be upon him's family." Everyone loves his children, wife, parents and relative. This love of one's family is a natural human instinct. The Prophet peace be upon him too expressed deep love for his beautiful family. All the collections of hadith, including the 6 authentic collections, contain a chapter describing the virtues and the outstanding qualities of the members of the Prophet's peace be upon him's family, manaqib. Sometimes he would describe their individual qualities, whilst on other occasions he would stress the important role his family will play in preserving Islam. Zayd ibn Arqam reports that the Prophet peace be upon him said, "I am leaving behind me 2 weighty things. First of them is the Book of Allah, which is the guidance and the light, and my family. I remind you of Allah about my family." Abu Zar said, "I heard the Prophet peace be upon him say, 'The example of my family amongst you is like the Ark of Noah. Whoever boarded it succeeded, and whoever remained behind is ruined.'" Bara reported, "I saw the Prophet peace be upon him carrying Hassan on his shoulder and saying, 'O Allah, I love him, so love him too.'" On another occasion, he asked Allah to love those people who love members of his family. Abu Huraira says, "One day I went with the Prophet to Fatima's house. He said, 'Where is the boy?' meaning Hassan. A little later, Hassan came out running, and the Prophet peace be upon him hugged him and said, 'O Allah, I love him, so love him, and anyone who loves him, O Allah, love him.'" Abdullah ibn Umar reported the Messenger peace be upon him said, "Hassan and Hussein are the leaders of the young people of paradise." The disciples are full of admiration for his love of the family. Once someone asked him, peace be upon him, "Who do you love the most?" He replied, "Hassan and Hussein." He would ask Fatima, "Bring my sons to me." He would kiss them and smell them. Ya'la ibn Murrah reports that the Prophet peace be upon him said, "Hussein is from me, and I am from Hussein. Whoever loves Hussein, Allah loves him." Once, someone from Iraq asked Abdullah ibn Umar about a person in Ihram, doing Hajj or Umrah, killing a fly. He reported the people of Iraq are asking about killing a fly. Yet they have murdered the grandson of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, called them my two roses in the world. Anas reported that both Hassan and Hussein looked very similar to the messenger, peace be upon him. Salma was crying one day. She was asked why she was crying. She said, I saw a dream. The messenger, peace be upon him, had dust on his head and beard. So I asked, what is the matter? He replied, I just witnessed the martyrdom of Hussein. One day, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was carrying Hussein on his shoulder, and someone remarked, what a wonderful mount you are riding. And the messenger, peace be upon him, replied, he is a wonderful rider. Verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Quran 13, Ayah 28. That was the Tragedy of Karbala. Hope you are learning with us via this podcast, and we would appreciate your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We are also on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, and all the other major platforms. Please do share the podcast with your family and friends. Do join our Islamic Audio Bites community on Facebook. We are also on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube as a voice-only channel. Do also have a look at our website at IslamicAudiobites.com. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. Hope your day is full of goodness. Assalamu alaikum.